Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Gerald Celente, publisher of the TrendsJournal newsletter, and I love your slogan, history before it happens. You win awards for it. So maybe let's just jump right in and ask, what are the top 10 trends you look to see in the new year?
Well, I can't tell you all top 10 yet. We're still putting them together. But one of the big ones, a couple of them, populism. You're going to start seeing it raging throughout the world. And that's a term that they use divisively, I should say, in the sense that they make it into a right-left thing. And it's really not. What it's happening is, as you look at the facts, the gap between the rich and the poor is widening around the world. And if you were to say that in the United States maybe 15 years ago, you'd be called a communist. But if you pick up the Financial Times a week ago, you'll see that both parties are now talking about the gap between the rich and the poor and what has to be done to solve the income inequality. And that's a global phenomenon going on now. Few have a lot and a lot have a little. And when people lose everything and have nothing left to lose, they lose it. And other things we're looking at, of course, on the economic front is the big issue of tapering. But it's not only a United States issue. I mean, look what's going on now with China as their lending rates are going up. And they're fearful of a slowdown because if they don't get more cheap money going into the system, how are they going to keep propping it up? They can't. Same thing in the U.S. What's going to happen when they start tapering? The only reason there's any so-called recovery at all is because of the record low interest rates. So right now they're doing exactly what they were doing back prior to the panic of '08. And they're giving people, again, if you want to buy an automobile, 0% interest, no verification needed. And they're building another bubble as well with the real estate market in the sense that you have interest rates, at record lows. But you see what happens when the interest rates start ticking up. When they went up 100 basis points, new mortgage applications went way down and banks started laying off people. So it's going to be a tricky issue with this tapering. What we're saying is we believe they're going to taper because they're going to have to. And they'll come up with another scheme to put money into the system, but not the tapering scheme. And when tapering goes on, the economy goes down because when tapering happens, interest rates are going to go up. And again, this is an interest rate recovery. With interest rates low, you have a slow recovery, if you even want to call it that. When interest rates go up, there's no room for anything other than a downdraft. And, of course, the bond market explodes, as we're starting to see in China.
Looks like China's driving the bus right now.
Yeah, well, they're in a very difficult situation. They're holding on to what? $3.5 trillion worth of reserves, and half of that is in U.S. dollars. And we're watching the dollar being devalued daily by this quantitative easing scheme that's been pushed upon the public. This is unprecedented in world history. No one's ever seen anything like this, whether it's the U.S., whether it's China, whether it's the ECB, now with their minus interest rates that they're going to be offering. They're all pumping money into the system, which again keeps making me bullish on gold.
What about the poor average person? Right now, they're saying it's kind of a 50-50 split. 50% are doing fine. The other 50% are struggling.
Oh, it's more than 50% that are struggling. You look at, for example, here in the States, median household income has declined 8.3% since 2007. That's phenomenal decline as the cost of everything is going up. So, and then you look at the data as well. It's the 1%. And again, you'd sound like a communist or a socialist saying this years ago, but the facts, the data stands on its own. The 1% are gaining all the momentum and gaining all the dough. You have in the United States 400 people. 400 have a net worth of $10 trillion. Why, that's bigger than the GDP of Canada.
Wow.
Yeah.
400 people.
Yes.
Now, does that give a case for the Chairman Maos of the world to say, let's go eat the rich?
That's what I'm saying. That's where you're going to start seeing this populism trend really developing. And, of course, they're going to call it right-wing. And they always do. It has nothing to do with right-wing, left-wing. It has to do with pragmatism. as well with the immigration and migration issue. You know, you have people leaving countries because they can't find jobs, and it's not only, you know, leaving African nations or third world nations. I mean, they're dumping out of, you know, Ireland, you know, looking for jobs. They're leaving Italy looking for jobs. So it's not, and then you have the problem of immigration coming in, where people are coming from nowhere, wanting to go someplace, and you have no more jobs for them. So they make it into a political issue in terms of right and left or good and bad, but it really comes down to pragmatism. You know, in the United States, they had very strict immigration rules following the Great Depression. I mean, you had a lot of people out of work, no jobs. You're going to bring new people in and then undercut the wages of the people that are already here? So they didn't allow it to happen. Now you have the biggest proponents of immigration in the United States are these companies like, well, the guy that's pushing it out loud, this Zuckerberg from Facebook. So they can hire the cheap H-1B visas, Indians and other skilled engineers and high-tech people from countries that are very poor and pay them very low wages. National Association of Manufacturers, the Chamber of Commerce. It's all about keeping wages low and boosting profits. Again, if you started talking like this 10, 15 years ago, you got a communist on the other end of the phone, you know. Nah, this is the way it is. The people here don't have jobs. Look, 95% of the jobs created in the United States in the last year have been temporary jobs and or jobs that are not paying living wages. That's a fact.
Well, you have all these big companies like McDonald's making billions, yet they're paying minimum wage to their workers, and a lot of those workers have to collect welfare, i.e. tax money, to survive.
That's right, food stamps and other benefits. And the same thing going on across the spectrum. Look, this is not globalization. And that's a kiddie word that they use, you know, to try to make it look legitimate. It's multinationalization. The multinationals have taken over everywhere. So every Walmart that you see, there used to be maybe in that city or area, a couple of hundred mom and pop shops that no longer exist. What are you going to open up in retail? You can't compete anymore. Are you going to open up a shoe store? You're going to open a clothing store? What are you going to open up? You can't compete. You're going, I got it. How about opening up a stationery store or a hardware store? You see, there used to be laws in place. They were called the Sherman Antitrust Act, the Robinson-Patman Act, the Clayton Antitrust Act, among them. And in the banking sector, of course, Glass-Steagall Act, so that the bigs couldn't grab everything. But really beginning with, to some extent, Richard Nixon, but really accelerating under Jimmy Carter, who everybody here in the United States loves to look at as, that wonderful peanut farmer. Yeah, he's the guy that started putting it all in the hands of the bigs by deregulation. You can see what happened when they deregulated the airline industry. Why, when I was flying back in the 70s, there was something like 150 airlines in the United States. Now you have two majors. You just saw the merger of U.S. Air and American, and you have United and Delta. Everybody knew it was going to happen. They had these strict regulations in place that were really keeping service high and prices low. And so they deregulated, put it in the hands of the few. And they've done it across the board. So nothing is going to change until, and again, people are going to have lousy jobs. What are you going to become? A store manager at Staples? How about you be a good servant and you'll get a manager at Home Depot? Yeah, I know you used to own a hardware store, but so what? Get back to work. So that's what's going on. Slavelandia around the world.
Wow. So it's not just a case of outsourcing jobs. They say, sure, you can have those same jobs here, but we're not going to pay you anything more than you get in India.
Exactly. And they've done it. And it's also very important to look at it in another light, in the sense that not only are they lowering wages, they're lowering benefits. And not only are they lowering benefits and pensions, people are working longer. But not only that, what they like to call hedge funds and private equity groups, these are corporate raiders in the old days. So everything is in the hands of a few. And you look at the number, you look at these chains. I mean, I was just reading where, TGI Fridays, TGF Fridays. They're going public, or they're trying to sell it or something. And I'm reading this company has like 177,000 employees. And I never heard of this company. I mean, I heard of them, but nobody would hear of them if you didn't study this stuff. And so that's what's going on everywhere.
Well, there's one just down the road from me.
Yeah.
I've never been there, but...
No, of course not. I mean, unless you want to eat corporate GMO, pesticide-laden foods, you'd have a wonderful time there.
If you're investing somewhere right now, where would you put your money?
Speaking only for myself, because I don't give financial advice, I'm invested in gold and real estate. But the real estate that I'm buying, I bought in Colonial Kingston, where our headquarters are, Colonial Kingston, New York. And I bought 3 pre-Revolutionary War buildings on the most historic corner in the United States, the only place where there's a stone building that predates the Revolution. So I do it for different reasons, and so that's what I do. But I'm not a speculator in the stock markets, and I certainly wouldn't be buying bonds now. And now you're seeing, again, a whole new speculation going. Look, the NASDAQ just hit 4,000. Everybody's cheering. And you're seeing all these, it's again, it looks like a dot-com bubble all over again. One after another, companies that are not making money and that are being offered $3 billion and going public and going at these very high rates. And then you see the whole Bitcoin thing going on.
I was just going to ask you about that. I mean,
I don't know. To me, it doesn't. It reminds me of the dot-com craze. I'm having trouble putting my hands around it, my head around it. When I could be 100% wrong. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm having difficulty understanding it long term, and it's the kind of thing, as we saw before, where now the prices are 1,000 plus, minus give or take. This thing could go down to 300, 400. It could go lower. It could go higher. It's too new to know, is the way I look at it. It doesn't have enough shelf life.
Now, if you're one of the people who bought Bitcoin at 10 cents a piece, and it's worth 1,000, obviously it's going to turn out pretty well for you. But
if you sell it.
Yes, but we all know, too, that when things start to reach an interesting peak, and I always think $1,000 for anything is kind of where you go, ooh, is that really worth it? Or just a lot of people put money in hoping it'll be worth it?
Again, you could say a Bitcoin toss.
I don't even know if it has a heads or tail.
Yeah, exactly. And so I don't know. Matter of fact, we're going to be doing a major story on it in the TrendsJournal, which will be out in a week on Bitcoin's future, and it's being written by our senior editor who knows a lot more about it than I do, Alex Silberman. So I'm going to rely on his take for it. As I said, I just don't have my head grasped around it enough to really, make a firm call on it, as I would do. For example, I think we're going to have some kind of real deep financial problems coming March, because that's when I can see the tapering unraveling, or going into play around January, and then seeing the implications of it. So I feel more comfortable with something like that I could have a lot of data behind it to support it. Where Bitcoin is, it's all air. It's true in the truest sense. It's a digital currency. It's in that whole cyberspace.
Well, people put lots of money in, and like you said, it could be like the tech-com crash that we saw a few years ago. It sounds good in theory, but again, we know theories don't actually drive us to work.
Again, this thing's too new for me. It just doesn't have the foundation. Again, there are some people that I respect very highly that think it has, it's great and it's going to go much higher. So I'm not arguing with them. I just don't know. But again, as I said, it's too new for me.
China says it's going to stop using the U.S. dollar for trade. Is that harmful for anyone or good for China?
Well, China's in a tough place. They're saying that. And what are they holding? As I said, about $1.5 trillion worth of dollars in their reserve currency. And they can't afford to see the value of the dollar go down, because then they lose their investment. So they may be talking one way and doing another thing. But China, again, they have serious problems. They have a huge crisis in that their interest rates are going up, and their debt levels are enormous. And I don't know how they're going to get out of it either. They're just another Ponzi scheme, as I see it, whether it's the ECB, the U.S., or the Chinese government dumping money into the systems to keep them going. So China could talk a game of backing out of the dollar, but I don't know if they have the wherewithal to do so. And let us not forget, China needs the United States to buy their junk. And if the United States and Europe don't buy, China doesn't make. And if China doesn't make, Canada, Australia, Brazil, Bolivia, Chile, and all those natural resource countries, they don't have a lot of stuff to sell to the Chinese, the Indonesians, the Vietnamese, and other countries that are low manufacturing-based outlets for those natural resources. So everything is in a cycle. And when you talk about China dumping out of the dollar, it's a vicious cycle. It might come back to bite them.
What about 3D printing? Is that going to be the end of centralized manufacturing?
I doubt it. I think it'll have its place, but I don't think it will replace. Not at this point.
Boy, I mean, Jay Leno getting a new engine block or something for some old obsolete sports car. That looked pretty impressive. But
it is. And again, maybe to some extent it will, but new things will be developed and new directions will be taken. Again, it may happen. It's kind of like in the Bitcoin realm, in the sense that it's too new to know.
Will we see social unrest because of this growing divide between rich and poor?
Well, exactly. That's what I was saying. Populism is going to be the big trend, particularly in Europe next year. That's going to be one of our top trends. Oh yeah, the people have had it. And you can see what the reaction already is here in the States. For example, they're arming rural police and cities around the country with military hardware taken from the Iraq War and the winding down of the Afghan War, with these massive armored vehicles and weaponry that you could go through the Battle of the Bulge with unscathed in today's times. So I really believe that the police and the governments are gearing up for very difficult economic times and a lot of social protests coming about in the very near future in a country near you.
Wouldn't it be cheaper to just give people what they need instead of stocking up on very expensive military hardware?
Well, you're being rational. And that's
sorry for that.
I mean, you could have said the same thing about bailing out the banks.
Well, Iceland had the right idea. They bailed out the homeowners who were about to lose their homes, and they jailed the bankers who put them in that position.
Yeah, but not in the good old USA.
The bankers still calling the shots. How could you change that?
Well, you can't change it through the system. You need a new system. And the way I look at it, I don't believe we should have political parties in any government. The politicians are supposed to be representatives of the people, not representatives of the special interests that are narrowly defined by their political ideology. So once we have a free system of free people representing the free people, to me that's the only way. Or the Swiss system of direct democracy. Let the people vote. They just had a referendum over there whether or not to put a cap on executive pay. The people said no. That was their choice. If they don't want to put minarets up, they said no, we don't want them up. It was the people's choice. Look, I mean, it's one of the richest countries in the world, if not the richest country, and they haven't been into a war since, about the 1850s. So they must be doing something right.
Sure. Their biggest battle use is they're the guards at the Vatican. That's the Swiss Army. That's what they do. And they make terrific watches and knives.
That's right.
I said my Swiss Army watch, my favorite feature is the corkscrew, which, of course, is a joke. So should we be saying a Happy New Year or semi-Happy New Year?
I would say Happy New Year in the sense that the future depends on each of us. And when the people change and find the courage within them to change within themselves, then the whole systems change. And that's the way I believe it anyway. And my motto at the TrendsJournal, think for yourself. But to me, it's not going to take a leader that's going to make the positive change. It's going to take the individual. And when the individual is in touch with themselves at any level, the spirit, the mind, and the body, that's when everything changes.
Well, when you said get rid of political parties, gosh, it would be those political parties who would fight like hell to keep it.
And again, they're not invincible, hardly. Look at them. Look at your guy over there in Toronto, unless you think he's invincible, that mayor over there. And unless you look at the United States people, whether it's Obama, Clinton, Bush, if it's Pelosi, Reid, or McConnell, or Boner, I mean, they invincible? Not in my eyes.
Well, we'll find out. We always want to find out what's going to happen before it happens. And if you want to stay on top of it, I guess you should be reading the Trends Journal. Gerald, is there a website people can go to find out more about the Trends Journal?
Yes, there is. It's TrendsJournal.com, TrendsJournal.com.
Thank you very much for chatting with us.
And thank you.